Okay, hey everyone, it's Coach Jim, and today I'm going to talk about rebuttal strategies. So, first of all, to kind of like review from earlier videos, like when you're building like your case has a series of what we call links and impacts, right? The last video I made focused mostly on impact calculus, like magnitude, risk, and time frame. So make sure you've reviewed that video before you watch this one. And another thing I want to talk about is links, okay? In order to have an impact, you have to prove in your contention that whatever you're claiming causes that impact to happen. Like fossil fuel consumption leads to carbon emissions lead to climate change leads to drought is bad because no water, no life, loss of biodiversity, extinction, wars, boom, these sort of things, right? Or a more simple example would be like sticking your hand on a hot oven will burn your hand. Sticking your hand on the hot oven is a link, and your hand being burned is the impact. And so what you do is you use like links to establish impacts in your cases as well as your rebuttals and that sort of thing. And another example could be like spending money on healthcare benefits the economy, and because people have more money to spend on other things rather than going poor because they can't afford medical bills. So I'm going to talk about how to kind of attack these contentions and specifically like how to debate against links and impacts. And first I'm going to teach you defense, and then I'm going to teach you offense. And the easiest way to remember this is what we call Dr. Mo. DRMO, Dr. Mo. Now, O is missing. I'll talk about O in the next couple slides because that's going to be very, very important. These are what we call defensive arguments. Defensive arguments are reasons why your opponent should not win the debate. So the first one is what we call deny the link. Now, deny the link is basically you somehow disprove that their link leads to the impact, okay? Because if there is no link, there is no impact. So let me show you an example. Let's say we're debating a topic, video games should be banned, okay? Now, what I've shown here is what we call a link chain, which is a series of links and internal links that ultimately lead to an impact. If you play video games, you won't do your homework. Internal link. If you don't do your homework, you will have bad grades. Internal link. If you have bad grades, you won't go into a good college. Internal link. If you don't graduate from a good college, you'll have a bad job. Internal link. If you have a bad job, you won't make any money. Ultimately leading to the impact that playing video games leads to poverty. Now, I would suggest trying to find more direct links because at the point at which there's so many internal links, as long as you prove that one of these internal links is not true, then your opponent does not have access to the impact of poverty. For example, maybe you get good grades even if you don't do your homework because you always get 100 on your exams because you're a genius. Another example, Howard Schultz, the CEO of Starbucks, did not go to a very good college. In fact, he went to arguably the worst college in my home state, which is Northern Michigan University. NMU, the N stands for knowledge. And he happens to be the CEO of Starbucks and one of the richest people in the world. You could have a bad job or not. You don't need to go to college to get a good job either. Like you can work in construction and make a lot of money doing that, or be a YouTuber and make tons of money. So as long as you prove any of these points are not true, your opponent does not have access to that impact. And this is almost kind of like a slippery slope logical fallacy when you think about it. Okay, so next. Reduce the risk, okay? Like a lot of people in debate always talk about like disaster scenarios that like threaten all life on Earth, like nuclear war. And what you need to do against that is kind of like defend against the risk of that happening and show that it has an extremely low probability. Like if they're like, hey, this causes nuclear war, you have some evidence that shows, hey, nuclear war is unlikely because of mutually assured destruction. World leaders do not want to die. They also don't want to obliterate their country. So nobody will be the first person to start the nuclear war. Therefore, nuclear war is not going to happen. And you provide evidence that shows that. The other thing you could do is like minimize the magnitude. Like you could claim your opponent is like over exaggerating the consequences of something. Like they say, hey, climate change, it's going to happen. It's going to kill us all. And you provide evidence that shows that climate change is survivable. Like humanity has survived the Ice Age. It survived different cycles of heating and cooling of the Earth. The environment is resilient. And so even though there are going to be a lot of bad things for climate change, it's not as bad as my opponents claim. Now, all these arguments are very defensive. They provide reasons why your opponent should not win the debate, or more easily, why you should not lose the debate. But as many of you who play sports know, you have to play both offense and defense to win the game. And so when we're looking at Dr. Bo, deny, reduce, minimize, the O stands for offense. And I'm going to show you a couple examples of offensive arguments you can make. And when I say offensive arguments, I don't mean like, like killing dogs is fun, because that to me is an offensive argument. It's more like, scoring points, like reasons why I should win the debate. Okay. So let's stay on with the video game topic, and let's say they say video games should be banned because they hurt your eyesight. Now, playing video games is a link here, and eyesight is the impact. And so by saying that video games harm your eyesight, you are showing that you care a lot about a person's eyesight, and it's a very, very important thing within the context of the debate round. So what if I show you a couple defensive arguments first? First of all, you could argue, well, if you take a break every hour for 15 minutes, it doesn't hurt eyesight. That kind of like weakens their argument. But let's be real. I know a lot of you who play video games, like even me, like, you kind of lose track of time, right? Another thing you could say is that, other things hurt your eyesight, like reading books or watching TV, but that doesn't invalidate the original point, right? That's kind of like what we call an alt causality argument. So what if I told you, since you consider eyesight important, what if video games actually improve your eyesight? So what I mean is, I'm wearing glasses. I have to take my glasses off. If you hold your hands up to your face like this, you can kind of see, sorry, I might be getting too close to my microphone. You can kind of see, like, I can still see my hands when I'm looking straight forward. And when I remove my hands, I can see everything, a lot of other stuff. Like, even though I'm not directly looking at it, I can see to my right, there's a window, and to my left, there's a cabinet. This is what we call your peripheral vision. Okay? And so, look, there's a lot of scientific studies that show that people who play video games regularly, especially on like a big screen television, have a better peripheral vision than people who don't. And if you're young, like, middle school or early years of high school, you may not know this, but peripheral vision is extremely important when you're driving a car, right? Also, video games can help improve the way that your eyes communicate with your brain. And so you can process visual information very quickly. So, like, I don't know if you ever read, like, Where's Waldo books when you were a kid. I don't know if those are still popular, but if you're not familiar, these are books with very complicated, like, imagery with a lot of clutter, okay? And you have to find this guy, Waldo, in the book as quickly as possible. it's discovered that with these sort of like activities, people who play video games are a lot better at processing complicated visual information quickly and finding these things. So actually, when you think about it, if you care about eyesight and I show you that video games improve your eyesight in some ways, that can be a justification as to why you should play more video games, right? So this is what we call a link turn, okay? Link turn basically turns your opponent's link against them, right? Like they say it hurts your eyesight, you say it improves your eyesight. They say something harms the economy, you say it makes the economy better. They say it causes nuclear war, you say it prevents nuclear war. Now, in all these cases, you have to have like evidence, right? And that's always really important, is you can't just like, oh, it makes your eyesight better because I said so. There are actual studies that show it improves your eyesight. Okay, so now that we kind of covered that, I want to talk about impact turns. An impact turn is very, like kind of a little bit different. Instead of like addressing the link level of debate, it goes and turns the impact level of debate, right? So they say, like, for example, environmental protection shuts down factories. Shutting down factories causes people to lose their jobs. This harms the economy, right? So like factories closing are bad because they harm the economy, people lose their jobs, et cetera, right? Now, when you're looking at this, an impact turn kind of like addresses the impact that your opponents make, okay? So when you're thinking about like offense versus defense, in this case, one defense argument is like, well, they can go get educated, get a job elsewhere, right? But you could actually argue that like when the economy slows down and these factories close, that's actually a good thing, right? Like, I mentioned in a previous video, I'm from Michigan. I did not grow up close to Detroit. I grew up about right between Detroit and Chicago. But as you all know, in 2008, there was a huge economic crisis that caused a lot of car parts factories to close. Detroit kind of like their economy went really bad. It still has not recovered from that. And a lot of people were out of work, right? But on the other hand, they saw like wildlife in the river for the first time since like the 1960s, like beavers and other, like beavers, fish, that sort of thing. Because beforehand, the factories had polluted the river so much that there was no, like, animals could not live in it. But now that the factories have closed, the environment has kind of cleaned up a little bit and, nature is returning. So you could argue, like, on this fact that the consequence of this impact of, like, economic slowdown and factories closing is a good thing. Because the environment is more important than just like, people having jobs. So an impact turn directly relates to like, they say a certain impact is bad and you say it's good. So they say climate change is bad because of droughts. And you say climate change is good because, you can grow food in Siberia now. Or they say that, nuclear war is bad, and you say nuclear war, I don't know, you can say nuclear war is good. But I remember there being some sort of like, evidence about that. Or these sort of things. Or they say, or you could be like, oh, you fear death, and death is not bad, and that sort of thing. Or those sort of things. Now, to be honest with you, I feel like a link turn is a much stronger argument than an impact turn, because it doesn't invalidate that people losing their jobs is a bad thing. Now, what's the difference between a link turn and impact turn? Using the previous example about eyesight, it would be like saying that video games hurt your eyesight, and hurting your eyesight is good because when you have a bad eyesight, you wear glasses and people think you're smart. Now, you don't want to do both, okay? This is what we call a double turn. Because if you do a link turn and an impact turn at the same time, that's not exactly a very good strategy, because you're either saying that you cause something bad to happen or you prevent something good from happening. So you should always pick and choose. I would say, in my own opinion, that like link turns are the strongest thing you can do. And impact turns could be an option if you cannot link turn your opponent's arguments. And if you can't really do either, then the best thing you can do is kind of like mitigate your impacts through defense, so you at least in the later rounds have some way to like weigh against your opponent's impacts. Okay, well, that's pretty much it for the day. I hope you enjoyed this, and keep on liking our videos, keep on watching, and I hope this is good for you. All right,